can you talk me through what's the difference between edge computing and more traditional computing?
Well, I think it's a great question. And I think the reason that kind of Synadia exists today, the audience might not know Synadia, and we'll get into that later, is for those that were around, we went through a pretty massive transformation of how we did things on premise or in our own data centers to cloud computing. And what Synadia believes in is that the transition to edge computing will be as big, if not bigger, and will happen a lot faster than the change to cloud computing. And for the audience, most folks realize that whether we knew it at the very beginning, now there's a very different set of rules on how you build, let's say, cloud native applications. We believe the same transition is going to happen for edge native, applications and systems.
Okay, so it sounds like it's the next big thing is moving from cloud computing to edge computing. But can you talk me through what are the benefits of it? Why would you want edge computing?
Well, I mean, I think the big thing going on here is that if you, and the folks at Synadia and Justyna especially know this about me, I try to simplify things to make me understand them better. But one of our North Stars, believe it or not, is the assumption that people are going to try to decrease latency to access distributed technology, whether it be services or data. And that's just always been the case. And so we went from data centers to cloud, and then cloud in multi regions, multi geos, CDN providers, this notion of what we call far edge, near as the cloud providers trying to hold on for dear life. I call it their blockbuster moment. But the far are kind of like the Akamais and the Fastly's and the Cloudflares and Netlify's and of course Vercel and Dino deploys of the world. But what you're starting to see, and I think we started to see this right about when we started Synadia, and that was one of our big bets, is that it won't stop there. They'll keep pushing into, their vehicles, their manufacturing systems, factories, distribution centers, medical devices, whatever that is. And again, it's just this major driver to decrease latency to access either data or a service. And for us, it's kind of a combination of both.
Okay, so it seems like the big goal is reducing latency, so you've got your compute happening near where it needs to be used, but also companies don't want the hassle of sort of managing their own infrastructure as much, which was the original benefit of cloud, I guess. So is it a sort of best of both worlds situation there?
Well, it's definitely both compute, but also data. So for example, if you have compute running locally, let's say inside of a vehicle, but it still needs to trombone back and forth, right, to get access to data. You could imagine a world where moving the data closer as well would make a lot of sense.
Okay, so compute and data together, that makes sense. Maybe we'll try and make this a bit more concrete, talk about like who's actually making use of edge computing. Justyna, can you talk me through some of the use cases?
Well, edge computing enables real-time decision-making. So it really unlocks the value hidden in the data. So every industry and every use case that relies on real-time insights into how the business is doing will benefit from edge computing. And so some of the examples that we're seeing today could be industrial manufacturing, where you'll have sometimes hundreds of sensors monitoring different machines on the assembly line, monitoring the levels of vibration, the temperature. If you can process their data as soon as it's generated and you can identify anomaly, maybe one of the machines is getting overheated. The moment you can act on this information, and that can save you money because you will keep your assembly line going. It can save you revenue because you keep producing things that whatever your factory is producing, whether it's vehicles, whether it's other things. And it's also keeping things efficient. And by the time you would have to send this data into cloud, it would be inefficient because it would introduce a delay in the time when you can act on this data. It will be very expensive because this data will consume a lot of bandwidth. And in some cases, the data should not even leave the premises because traversing the regions would put you against the compliance regulations.
To add to what Justyna is saying, a little bit more concretely in terms of the verticals, right? Manufacturing. We really believe manufacturing is going through a renaissance right now, not only just decreasing latency, but autonomous behavior, east-west, anomaly detection type stuff, meaning, hey, this part looks weird in our factory, and we have 80 of these factories worldwide. Does it look weird in your factory as well? The whole notion of a vehicle becoming a technology platform that just happens to have wheels, so the connected car is a big one. We're also seeing it in kind of a revitalization of what we call, the physical store experience. So a lot of people went to pure digital online, obviously with Amazon, but Walmart, went to keep pace. And I think what we've seen as we both entered into COVID as kind of a forcing function, which we can talk a little bit more about why we think that was, but exiting out of COVID of how do we redefine the experience when someone's in a store? And you can imagine, right? We need lots of access to information at a very, very quick rate. And to Justyna's point, if for some reason the cell connection from our store to the cloud is down, or our Starlink or whatever that might be, we want the store to have a certain level, of autonomous behavior. And then the last example, believe it or not, is we're seeing a massive explosion in how people want to enhance the fan experience. So think of live sporting events, motor car, events like racing and things like that, where they want to immerse the fan more with what the drivers are experiencing, the data that's coming off of their car, the data that's coming off of other cars, the track. And you can imagine a world where, again, to Justyna's point, if we were tromboning either to get the data to the cloud and then go to the cloud to get data back, right, to ask a question or to enhance some experience either on their phone or whatever that is, people are going to want to cut that out. And what they found is that you can't just forklift an app from the cloud to this edge, right? That it is a very different world, like we talked about earlier on in the podcast, when we went from our server room to a data center to the cloud.